Alrighty, so in this video I'm going to be showing you how to create the spur and worm gear. So just showing you this, demonstrating it first. You'll see that we have the worm gear here that is going to be rotated, and what's going to happen is basically the spur gear here is going to end up rotating as well based off of this movement. If I end up going in here, I can actually go to Revolute 2 here that I've created. I could animate this out for you in the top view, and I'll set this up so that it's on a loop. And so whenever I play this, you're going to see that basically this worm gear here is going to end up driving the spur gear to actually rotate. Now I could have done a little bit better of a job with my offsets on here and lining this up at first. So we're going to do a little bit better of a job on that this time around creating it. But anyways, let's go ahead and let's begin. We're going to click the plus button down here. We're going to create a new assembly. That's what we're going to do. And now in our assembly, we're going to want to insert the parts that we are going to need. So I'm going to go ahead and insert a 4x4 plate. We're going to also get 2 connector pins. We're going to also bring in a ×4 shaft. We're going to also bring in a ×8 shaft. We're going to also bring in a shaft bushing here. We're going to also bring in a 2x2 beam. And then we are also going to bring in this 1x2 corner connector piece as well. And then finally a 36 tooth gear, as well as this worm gear, of course. Alrighty, so as always, remember we want to fix our base. So this is the 4x4 base. So I've fixed that so that if I click and drag on this now, it's not going to move. Up next, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create this little guy that's going to hold the actual shaft for the worm gear that's going to be rotating. And so what we're going to go ahead and do is I'm going to actually click on this. I'm going to move this over here. I'm going to do 90 degrees in there so that'll rotate 90. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to end up bringing this guy around as well by 180 degrees. And then I'm actually going to go ahead and flip it this way also 180 degrees. Just so we have it set up like that. I'm going to drag this guy over here. We're going to go to this front view, and I'm going to go ahead and get my connector pins. So now we're going to go ahead and fasten first. We're going to click on that circle that was right there. Remember, we can always use the shift trick if you're having any issues. Just like in here, I'm going to actually use the shift trick. So I'm going to go ahead and hover over this face, hold down shift, click right there. Now what we need to do is we need to flip that direction so that we can have that on there correctly. Very, very good. We're going to go ahead and go back up here. And then see that this thing's rotated a little bit since then. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate that at 90 degrees again. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go to the fascinate one more time. I'm going to hover over this face, click on that guy while holding down shift. And I'm also going to pop over here, hover over this guy, hold down shift, and then click. And then, so now what I've also got to end up doing is I do have to flip that direction as well. Very, very good. And it'll do that in OnShape where it might look like, you know, you lost one of the connections for your pins there, but just know if you press the green check mark, it'll go ahead and transfer everything else that you've done to that part. Alrighty, so now up next, we've got to actually connect this 2x2 piece here to these connector pins. So I'm going to go ahead and go into Fascinate again, and I'm going to hover over this face, hold down shift, click on that point right there. You might end up noticing that, I mean, at least for me right now, it's kind of bugging out. Reason for that is because it's probably because I got this other assembly up. So after you've done some of these assemblies, you might end up having a little bit slower speeds there. So I see that that part is in there correctly. We're going to go ahead and press the green check mark. And then so now, let's just go ahead and test this part out. I should end up trying to move this. Nothing should end up coming apart there, so that all looks good. Now, awesome part about this, whenever we are creating this design here, there's actually 2 of these. So what we can do is just highlight this, and then I can actually copy and paste that. So now what we've got to do next is I've actually got to place these connector pins into the 4x4 base. So I'm going to go ahead and select that point right here. And then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to hover over this face, hold down shift, and I'm going to click on that center there. So then now we can see that that transferred over pretty well. We've got that set up. I'm going to go ahead and do a little click and drag test here. It looks like all is good. I'm going to go ahead and go to the fasten mate here again. We're going to go ahead and hold down shift, click right there. We've got that point set up. Then we've got to kind of think about this. So this is going to actually rotate 180 degrees. So I want to actually go to this connector pin here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that point while still using that shift trick. Don't forget about the shift trick. Now, as we can see here, we do need to end up rotating this around. So I can click on this twice. That's going to bring that around. And so now all is looking good. Let's go ahead and do a click and drag test. Yep, everything is still fastened and fixed there. Alrighty, perfect. So what we're gonna go ahead and do now is we're gonna create a little sub-assembly here. It's gonna be of this worm gear on this ×8 shaft. So what I'm gonna use is going to be the fasten mate. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on this point here. And then what I'm additionally going to do is I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to hover over this face, hold down shift, and then click the center there. So let's try that again one more time. Hold down shift, click in there. Very nice. Okay, now there is going to be a little bit of an offset that we're going to have to end up doing here. Currently, I'm just going to put in there negative 1.5. Oops, sorry, positive 1.5. Just so that we have that in the middle there a little bit more. So this is our sub-assembly. This is going to be rotating. It's going to go through this axis right here with the revolute mate, actually. What I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to take this little guy right here. We're going to hover over this face, hold down shift. I'm going to click right there. So that is that point. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to actually place it right here in this center origin slot. And then so now what I also need to do is I do need to flip this direction. We're going to press the green check mark. Now this guy should be able to rotate around just like so. What we want to do next is we're going to take this, I think this is the ×4 shaft here, and we're going to go ahead and fasten. So what we want to do is we want to go to this top part here, click right there. Then what I want to do is I want to go inside here. Actually, I want to go on that bottom face, and then we want to click on that center point there. I do need to flip this direction. As you can see, we've got that set up where that looks good. So we've got that created. Next part, we want to use the fasten mate once again. Hold down shift, click right there in that center point. And then what we want to do is go right here, click right there. Now, as you can imagine, we actually don't want this to be placed right there on the top. Where we want to actually place this is if I look at this from the front view, it's going to do a pretty good job of showing us it. But basically, we want this spur gear, 36-tooth spur gear, to be lined up with this hole right here, because that is going to be where the axle or the drive shaft is going to actually go with that worm gear. So what I could do is I could do the offset. Now I'm going to go ahead and offset this by negative 1.5. Let's try that out. Okay, so that was too much. Let's try negative 1.125. And as we can see here, that is looking pretty solid actually. So that's going to be good. I'm going to go ahead and press the green check mark. Now what we can do is we can test out this rotation here. So let's see here. Looks like it's rotated, and that's good. Go back to my isometric view. Now the last part here is that we want to end up taking this shaft here and we want to send it through this hole right here. So we want to have a revolute mate because it should be able to rotate. So we're going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to hover over this face, hold down shift, and then I'm going to click on that center point there. What I'm going to then do next is I'm going to go ahead and come down here and click right there on this point. Now, as you can imagine, we are going to have to offset this a little bit. And so what we can do is we can go back into this revolute mate here. We can go into the offset. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually move this guy over. So let's try this out. Let's try going negative first. That looks pretty solid. I'm going to go ahead and move it over. Yeah, let's go over -1. And so now, wow, this actually came in pretty well here. The only thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to actually move this gear over a little bit so that basically these gears are just almost in contact with this worm gear here. And so that's looking pretty good. So now what we want to do next is we want to actually use a gear relation. So that's going to be how whenever we rotate this, it's going to actually cause this to rotate as well so that we can mimic that lifelike movement. So what I can do is I can go ahead and click on the gear relation. Now what it's going to want is for us to select two different mates that are involved or that have a relation in terms of these gears, or has a gear ratio, gear relation. What we're going to put down for the relation ratio is going to be 136. And then what we're going to also want to do is, now this may or may not be required for you, but if you click reverse direction, usually I have to end up doing that for this. So now what we can do is I can start to move this guy. Now what I should notice is that whenever I move this, the worm gear should also be moving just like that. And so what we can also do is we can go back to our isometric view. I can end up going to this revolute. I can right click, I can click animate. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set this down as a loop, and I'm going to click play. Now, as you can see, this is moving correctly. What you can do is you can actually set this to be a lower value. If you do that, it'll move a whole lot faster. But there we have it. That is how you create the worm and spur gear assembly. What I'm going to do here, just at the end, is I'm going to go ahead and name this, because remember, we always want to end up naming our assemblies. And there we have it. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope that was helpful.